Thank you very much for that introduction. Thanks everyone for joining today. It's our 30th More Series webinar. So it's special for a couple of reasons. One, it's number 30, but also we have our first customer joining us who's going to talk a little bit about how MAS 360 has helped them in their business. And I'm happy to have Tom Eaton, who's the Information System Security Manager at the Office of the CIO at the General Services Administration, join us today to speak. Tom, thanks for joining.
Hello, Joe. I hope everyone's doing well.
Great. And we also have Jeff Ward, who's the Vice President of the Federal Group at FiberLink, and is also going to discuss, frankly, how FiberLink has worked closely with a number of government agencies to help solve mobility and security problems. Jeff, thanks for joining today.
My pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to have a little bit of more of a Q&A session today than a straight presentation. And I'll walk everybody through the agenda here. So where we're going to start is by discussing how cloud-based solutions support the strategic initiatives of the GSA. So Tom's going to lay out kind of what those initiatives are, how mobile device management has played into that, and how MAS 360 specifically has helped, and then eventually some of the benefits there. We're going to talk about the best practices for evaluating, selecting, and implementing mobile device management solutions. So obviously, Tom was responsible for running that process at GSA, so we'll get a chance to hear what was important to them. We'll discuss some benefits, takeaways, and lessons learned. So, anyone who's gone through a major IT project knows that the postmortem and the analysis of what went right, what went wrong, and what could be done better is one of the most critical things. And obviously, getting a chance to hear what someone else's experiences are is really valuable. So that's kind of one reason why we're certainly happy to have Tom here to discuss that. And then finally, we will have some time left, hopefully at the end, for Q&A. And we'll take questions and answers through the panel, through the Q&A panel or the chat panel. And I'll work with Tom and Jeff to hopefully get those questions answered right here during the webinar. If not, we'll follow up later via email if we can't handle it right here and now. So that's what we're going to be covering today. I think it's going to be a lot of great information. We're going to start by having Jeff talk a little bit about FiberLink, if you don't know who we are, and our experiences in the public sector. So Jeff, I'll let you handle that.
Thanks, Joe. I know people are more anxious to hear Tom. He's far more interesting, so I'll run through this pretty quickly. I think most significant is that FiberLink has been doing this a very, very long time, and we've always focused on mobile device management or enterprise mobility management, as you can see. So we're not a point security solution provider who's gone out and bolted on an MDM solution or a telco provider that's trying to get into a new space. We've been doing this a long time, and all we've ever had is a laser focus on mobile devices. So for the longest time, as you can imagine, that was laptops. And in the mid-90s, it was about secure remote access. But what FiberLink management did right was recognize early on that instead of access driving security, that very soon security was going to drive access. So we began to bolt into our secure remote access platform some very simplistic security and compliance checks, and kept fleshing that out until we turned the model completely on its head quite some time ago and created Mobility as a Service 360, which is a continuous monitoring platform for off-network mobile devices so that we can monitor, enforce compliance, and report on devices where you need it the most when they're disconnected from your network. So it's important to realize we don't provide antivirus or firewall or any of those point security solutions, but we're an overlay, or as Tom likes to say, who's watching the watcher, to gather a plethora of information from a mobile and a remote endpoint and provide that information back up to our hosted platform so that our customers have anytime, anywhere visibility and control over these mobile devices. So as you can imagine, up until very recently, we had zero business in D.C. because crazy things like mobility and wireless and telework weren't even talked about. So when the new administration came in, suddenly numerous OMB initiatives started coming out. First it was telework, and then COOP, and Green IT, Business 2.0 with continuous monitoring, And of course, as we're all aware, last December, OMB came out with the cloud first policy, all of which were, frankly, softballs right across the plate of the value proposition for Mass 360. So how we help our federal customers is to meet those OMB initiatives. We turn the model of typically with a more mobile workforce, IT becomes very reactive, and our whole value prop is to allow our customers to become more proactive and get in front of issues even before a device, whether it's a laptop or a smart device, connects back to the network. And the fact that we do it, what makes us very unique, is that we do consider mobile devices both laptops and smart devices, and that's iPads, iPhones, Droids, whatever, and it's delivered as a fully managed software as a service. So there's no servers that go on the network, there's no servers that go in the DMZ, there's no bodies on site. So it is literally up and running in minutes, providing quick to install, very easy to use because it is a managed service, and quite affordable, or as some of our customers call us, it's cheap and fast. But if you look at the Cloud First OMB policy, not only is it about using cloud services, but about going to more short-term value projects, I should say, instead of the big forklift infrastructure upgrades, which fits right into our model. So Joe, I'll stop there and turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Tom, we're going to kind of do this as a series of questions to you and hopefully just let you kind of relay your experiences and what you learned along the way. Where we want to start is this. Could you just lay out for us what the strategic initiatives that the GSA were and are that led you to mobile device management and ultimately to Mass 360 as a tool that could help you?
Sure, Joe. And once again, I'd like to thank FiberLink for inviting me, and hopefully I can provide some good information that others can use as well. But as Jeff leaded into, IT has gone through a major transformation over the course of the past few years, both with a new administration and here in GSA with a new administrator. As with every new administration, there come new strategic initiatives and direction. Within GSA, I wanted to lay out 4 of them that the administrator gave to my CIO and as well as the rest of the employees and contractors in GSA. The first of them deals with what everyone knows as green IT. And this is what our administrator, Martha Johnson, calls her moonshot. And that is, if you remember back in the 1960s, John Kennedy challenged the country to go to the moon and safely return, human beings back to Earth before the end of the decade. That was the moonshot then. Hers is what she calls ZEF, or a Zero Environmental Footprint. And again, that's a very important thing in today's world and today's economy and today for the federal government. So zero environmental footprint in GSA means reducing costs and reducing energy consumption. And Joe, with that, I believe you have a polling question to begin with.
Yeah, we're going to ask our first poll here, and we're going to share the results with folks in about a minute when it's ending. And basically what we want to know is, so Tom said this is a major initiative of the GSA. We'd like to know whether or not this is an initiative at the organization you're part of. And in a minute here, the poll will end. We'll share the results with you, and you'll see them pop up here on the right side. So Tom, I'll let you keep going on that.
Okay. With that, the second major initiative that I wanted to talk about is telework and mobile computing. And of course, that fits right in with Mass 360. But again, and I like to think of myself as one of GSA's poster children for that entity. As the ISSM, of course, I work directly with the GSA CIO and the Senior Agency Information Security Officer. Both of them are in Washington, D.C., but what few people know is I live in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm what's known as a virtual employee. And in those days gone past, the idea of being more than 20 or 30 feet away from your boss scared your boss to death because they wanted to know what you were doing, when you were doing it, and where you were at. But both OMB and GSA came across and said, you know what, we need to get our workforce mobile, and we need to be able to, and this is where GSA steps in, as the landlords for federal space, we need to reduce the square footage footprint of both our agency and show other agencies how they can do it as well. And an initiative we have now underway in GSA is we're renovating our headquarters building, which is about a block and a half from the White House. And it today had the ability to house our headquarters, but what it's going to house in the near future when the renovation is completed is another moonshot, which is to bring all our national capital regional offices to that building. Don't know the exact numbers, but a good ballpark is to bring 5,000 people into about 2,000 spaces. Well, how are you going to do that unless you stack 3 people into a cubicle? Well, what you have to do is you have to come up with a good telework plan. Our agency now has people that telework 2-3 times a week, have all the tools they need to be able to telework, and it leads into our third major initiative we have in the agency, and now starts more closely aligning with just IT initiatives, which is what our CIO calls A3. A3 essentially means being able to work anytime, with any device, anywhere. Our administrator has a saying is, work is what you do, not where you are. And A3 fits to that exactly. The idea is that a GSA employee should be able to be productive while they're riding the metro into work. They should be fully productive and fully capable of doing anything they need to do in the office while they're teleworking at home. And from that, GSA probably made its biggest leap to date, and we're doing it today as we speak, and that is moving our entire email and collaborative platform to Google. Many of you may have read about this, but we're the first federal agency to move our entire email platform to the cloud. And as Jeff alluded to earlier, OMB and the federal CIO, Vivek Kundra, has some pretty bold goals there, and one of the challenges he gave to every agency was to name 3 things that you're going to move to the cloud in the next 18 months. For GSA, our biggest one, of course, was what we're going through today, which is moving to Google email. I today am operating in Google. As we like to say, we're now living in Google. A second of those 3 initiatives is MAS 360. So you can see we've tied what we're going to be talking about today to that same cloud-first policy. And as GSA likes to look at it is, we like to lead our initiatives that people like Vivek Kundra challenge us with. And again, with Google Email and MAS 360, we believe we're leading that charge out into a new frontier that allows us to go to anytime, any device, in any place. And with that, Joe, I think you had a second polling question for the audience.
Yeah, our next question is pretty simple. So Tom has laid out what GSA is doing based on the direction from the government about cloud-based initiatives. We want to know what your organization is doing, and we'll share the results as soon as the poll's finished. Tom, I'll let you get to your 4th initiative.
Okay, and the 4th initiative was another OMB mandate. And those of you that are familiar with the federal IT and FISMA requirements from OMB was what's known as Cyberscope. Cyberscope essentially mandates that we begin to electronically provide real-time feeds various pieces of information about our infrastructure, software, hardware, and all those things. Well, CyberScope requires an automated data feed. We have worked with MAS 360 and their engineers over the course of the past 6 to 7 months to take our MAS 360 implementation and be able to provide electronically for the first time those automated data feeds in the proper XML format that CyberScope requires. We're now capable of doing that beginning with the July monthly submissions into CyberScope because of our work with MAS 360.
That was great, Tom. I mean, it certainly sounds like you've kind of really driven down from the top these kind of very large initiatives into very discrete projects and things that can be done. So we're going to move on to the next part of this, where I'd like to ask you what some of the challenges were, the IT challenges. What were the side issues for that, and any other specific technical challenges that you ran into?
Well, of course, going back to those 4 initiatives, starting with Green IT, and I'll kind of cover these pretty quickly. When you talk about Green IT, what we were trying to do, first of all, is how much energy are we consuming? What was our carbon footprint? When, machines come on, they come off, they go, they come, being able to capture that. And with Green IT, this was another initiative that we were able to work with MAS 360 because they're a managed service versus a commercial off-the-shelf product where you buy the software, it is what it is, it does what it does, and if you want something else, when the next feature set comes out and the new version's released, maybe it'll do this. With a managed service, we as an agency could reach back to MAS 360 and their engineers and say, you know what, we need to be able to measure the power utilization on our machines. And because machines can report it, and because those machines through MAS 360 are connected to the cloud, MAS 360 and their engineers, they were able to develop that ability as a managed service for GSA. In other words, we handed off the requirement, they handed us back the answer. With telework and mobile computing, if you do any research on MAS 360 at all, that kind of answers itself. It allows you to, go through and see and understand things about your users and their systems, whether they're mobile handheld devices or laptops, for example. I can remember an early meeting we had with FiberLink and Mr. Ward. Our CIO was sitting in the meeting, and our Director of Infrastructure Operations, and we'd actually started a very small pilot, and we brought up the results from that pilot, and it showed our CISO's computer, and they moved to the Wi-Fi connections, and it actually showed the different Wi-Fi hotspots he'd been connecting to, and he was able to pluck them out and say, yeah, that's when I was at work, and yeah, that's when I was on vacation with my family in Colorado skiing. And so those kind of things kind of help the light bulb go off, so to speak, to show that, hey, this is a tool that can help us manage our mobile workforce. Because as your workforce gets more mobile, they're taking the stuff with them, and so you need to be able to see what's going on beyond the perimeters of your firewall. And with that, again, the anytime, anywhere, any device kind of thing, we needed a platform that did this sort of thing for many different things. We had laptops, we have iPads, we have BlackBerries, we're getting towards Androids. We're now working in Google, so our people are everywhere. And so to get that anywhere, anytime, any place, it required a new way of thinking, which was completely different than an old way, which was keep everything behind a firewall, maintain it there, and you're safe, because you're behind that firewall. And then finally, with CyberScope, it was a case of OMB laid out a mandate, but there wasn't any commercial development at the time they laid it out to the formats they required. I believe there are today very few vendors that have been CyberScope certified for one or more XML format submissions. Again, it being a managed service, we were able to turn to the engineers and say, well, here's the requirements. We'll get you connected with the people that are smart on it, and we'd like this to happen. And then we kind of put it off in the closet and let that get worked as a managed service, and now FiberLink has brought that back to us, so now we're able to pull it up in our portal, look at our devices, click export. It would go to XML, and we can post it in the CyberScope. We didn't have to put any of our own engineering time into it to make it happen.
That's great. Hey, could you tell us a little bit about what you were doing at the time that these initiatives hit? What were the tools and processes you were using?
Well, and probably the first biggest point, Joe, that I will say is most of what I'm talking about is brand new. It's brand new to the world. You know, the idea of the government working in the cloud is a concept I would say 2-3 years ago would have been, what are you talking about? You're going to put your data where? And now it is, well, that's where you're going to put your data. Another OMB initiative we have is data center consolidation. So OMB is saying to us, we're going to shrink your dollars, you better shrink your data centers. So a lot of this was brand new with no rules, and it was kind of go sit down with a pencil and paper, figure it out, and figure out how you're going to do it. Another thing was we had a number of tool sets that could do some of the things that MAS 360 could do. But again, most of them were commercial off-the-shelf software versus a managed service. So as I said earlier, you bought this tool, and if you bought version 2.2 of it, this is what the tool did. It was given to a team. That team would manage it. They could provide reporting on it to the capabilities of the tool. But very often you had to have multiple tools that were managed by multiple teams, and there was no management overview into it as a single platform or portal that someone like the CIO or the CISO could go in and say, what's happened with, for example, the Microsoft patching last month, and at the same time, what's the status of the encryption on all my laptops? So being able to merge tools, which of course when you can do that, you find some cost savings in that, of course, because you're not having to have multiple vendors, multiple tools, multiple maintenance contracts, and the maintenance overhead required to manage it internally. Again, it being a cloud service that's managed, we just merely, once we do our contracting, we give that out to the service provider, in this case MAS 360, and they're responsible for all those things, which is what makes cloud computing attractive. You can spin it up to whatever size you need, and you can spin it back down, and the cloud provider is the one responsible for all that back-end work. Another thing is when you come to the processes we used in selecting and researching, it was a funny thing, and maybe it was fate, as I always like to tell Jeff Ward. It wasn't so much that we found MAS 360, but MAS 360 found us. It really was a case of it was brought to us, shown to us, and from that, understanding what cloud computing means is we were able to take advantage of that and say to the company to say, we'd like it to do this, we'd like it to do that, this would be a good thing that it could do. And that not only benefited us and continues to benefit us today, but we also believe can benefit other federal customers who have the same FSMA reporting and management requirements that GSA has as an agency ourselves. And with that, Joe, I believe you had a third polling question?
Yeah, we're going to run our next poll now.
Actually, Joe, if I could, and thanks for that. That was a great response, Tom. Just a slight clarification in terms of the cloud computing and data. I like to refer to what we do. Just keep in mind we're software as a service. It's not platform as a service or infrastructure as a service. What I like to call cloud computing light or really hosting. So there's no data that flows through our platform. It's in a single location. It's not arcing around the world. It's in Philadelphia, mirrored in 2 sites in the States. So no GSA data is hosted there, no data flows through there. So it's really a very lightweight way to get that check in the block for the cloud first policy without a lot of the big concerns about offloading data and applications to the cloud.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Jeff. And for clarity's sake, we don't keep our files from our applications up there or anything. It is when I speak to data, I'm talking about metrics that come off our machines. For example, what's our pet status, for example? It's really not hard file data. It's more the metrics of what is being reported through to the MAS portal.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
All right, I'm going to open up our third polling question here. It's pretty simple. We're asking folks if they're likely to buy an MDM solution within the next year. So you've heard Tom talk about a few of the benefits. But while that poll's running, Tom, let's kind of shift over to kind of MAS 360 itself and now get more into the solution than the problem. Ultimately, why did you choose to go with a cloud-based solution over the other alternatives you considered, and I guess specifically MAS 360?
Well, again, and it comes from the federal CIO, and of course the GSA CIO, Casey Coleman, is an advocate of that policy that he laid out in 2 words, cloud first. And that directive that came from OMB said you will consider the cloud first. You must look at that as a methodology versus, as I said earlier, the old way of looking at it where you might develop it in-house, or if you bought commercial off-the-shelf software, that it would be managed in-house. And so that's where we now have our eyes, because that's where we believe the idea in place for computing in the future will be. Whether it's mobility as a service, infrastructure as a service, any one of those, cloud computing provides benefits that because it's shared amongst all. And when I say that, we are also very cognizant of the fact of security. I'm the ISSM. That's my main focus. So again, it's a case of that this shared computing is still secure within the government space, meaning it's not just out there for anybody to get at. It is secure. It's just a new way of thinking. So another key point to that is, and I've kind of alluded to it a few times, but I really wanted to hone in on it here, is the fact that it's a managed service. All we do is we bring requirements to the table. It's flexible. It's developable. It's something that develops and grows and migrates into differing things rather than here's the 10 things it can do, click on these buttons. And just some quick examples that I can give you that we developed with MAS 360 and their engineers during our pilot. One that I can think of right off the top of my head is we wanted to know how many machines had multiple versions of Java on their computers. Because many times with Java rollouts, when you install a new one, it doesn't remove the old one. But yet it's still there, and yet it still causes a security vulnerability. So within a few days, the MAS 360 engineers were able to develop a reporting tool that then showed us not only how many machines had multiple versions of Java, but what machines they were and what versions they had. So then we could look at them individually if need be and zero in on them. No commercial off-the-shelf product can do that without needing to be re-engineered. You could go through the process of developing some metric or ability internally, but that takes a lot of overhead, both in manpower and resources. So again, a managed service just makes sense. And again, with MAS 360, they provided us the ability to, as we come up with something new, either as a need, a requirement, or a thought, we then can pass it over to their engineers. They can analyze it and provide us results in a timely manner.
Yeah, we certainly think we're on the right side of history with cloud-based infrastructure. I'm glad that you agree with that.
Hey Joe, can I interject just real quick? Just one to your point, and that was a great illustration. But I think one of the things that is important to point out is that information that you requested in terms of the Java versions. You're getting that off of machines that are not connected to the GSA network, and I think that's the big differentiator for MAS 360 is when that question is posed, typically you could have land-based tools that could, as you said, engineer it and get that info, but anybody that's not connected to that minute when you do that query, you don't see them. The difference with MAS 360 is wherever that device is, whether it's on or off the network, you've got that information at your fingertips.
And again, that to Jeff's point, that goes back to, if you go back to our initiatives, two of them primarily being mobile workforces and A3. In other words, it used to be that the laptop stayed in GSA, now it can be anywhere. So we needed a solution that can be anywhere and essentially still do that reporting of information and get it back to the portal so it can be reviewed and be current. We didn't want to have to wait till the laptop came back to the GSA network to be able to pull that information.
Yeah, makes sense. So Tom, could you talk a little bit about your implementation plan, where you started and how you phased things in over time?
Sure. Essentially, we began with a pilot in April or May of last year to where we finally did our testing and everything, and then we issued a contract that began the 1st of October. So we started in late September, beginning of October, in planning the rollout of the MAS 360 agent first to our workstations. That, of course, we have a population of about 18,000, so that in itself was a major undertaking. We went through testing and we rolled it out in small groups first, so we finally ensured we had a process that could get it out cleanly everywhere. We completed that rollout in the first quarter of FY11. We then also started an initiative where we did it on static infrastructure servers. And again, where the prime key to the MAS 360 platform is mobility, but again, to the managed service aspect, this was another thing we saw as a target. Because again, if you go back to that green IT, we were looking to be able to provide power information, and to the cyberscope requirement, we needed to provide hardware, software installations. So we saw an added benefit by going beyond our laptops to our infrastructure servers. And we've gone through and deployed that now to, I believe, a little over 1,000 Windows infrastructure servers. And so we then moved into the next level, kind of coinciding with our move to Google and the cloud, and that's mobile devices. And our primary focus have been iOS devices, iPads and iPhones, and we've also started working on Android devices as the Android market starts to develop the ability to encrypt their devices to a degree that they meet satisfactorily federal IT standards, that in the future we hope to be able to move smartphones such as Android Pros, for example, just as an example, that have encryption on them, being able to put them into our inventory as well. So again, those mobile devices, whether they be handhelds, tablets, or laptops, are very key to our strategy of telework and A3. So that essentially has been where we've been to this point, and a little bit of where we're going. Again, other platforms we're looking at is both Linux and Sun to increase our server population for that same power, inventory, and cyberscope reporting metrics. And that's off into the future, besides what we're going to be doing with iOS and Android devices.
That's fantastic. I mean, obviously, at FiberLink, we work with our customers a lot on these large-scale rollouts. So we're always happy, to hear that things went smoothly for folks, because that's certainly a big focus for us. Hey, could you tell us a little bit about some of the benefits that you've experienced so far, in terms of either better operational efficiency and hopefully cost savings that flowed through from that? And, maybe specifically things that you can do today because you've got MAS 360 in place that you could not do before.
Well, and in all honesty, some of them are tangible, some are intangible, some of them are brand new because it didn't exist in the world before. And so I'll kind of try and cover each of those a little bit. From a tangible aspect, again, we have multiple tools and have been able to, and are doing considerations and evaluations of being able to retire from our inventory other tools. And that's simply because, again, we're looking at that single pane of glass of having one platform where we can do all these differing things with one managed service. Again, with our emphasis to a cloud-based solution versus commercial off-the-shelf software that actually often requires internal server hardware to maintain and manage. So there is obvious cost savings there, because if you can get rid of 4 tools and put them into one, you have that cost savings realization. Some of the intangibles are, and again, maybe it's a benefit. Sometimes I consider it my own personal headache, but it is what it is. So it's not MAS 360, and that's, the CIO or the CISO can say, "Hey Tom, how many people got this?" And I need to know in 2 minutes, because they now know I can provide it for them in 2 minutes. So I could be in my A3 world running around somewhere, and I have to come back to that portal to come back and get them that information, but that was never available before. Sometimes it would take us a day or 2 days, or maybe even longer, to find out whether or not our Microsoft patches for this month had been rolled out and applied successfully. Now the CIO, if she gets a query, can find that out in 2 minutes. So that single pane of glass, being able to look at things like patching, VPN, encryption, all those kind of things are very beneficial. We can also look at it as to who's using what and when are they using it. In other words, for example, X laptop last reported in a week ago. Well, we can also then see how our rollouts and inventory management is going as devices come off the portal. So that's been another benefit as well. Another thing that we haven't had to do as far as cost is concerned, we haven't had to go out and buy new tools under the old philosophy. Again, being a managed service, we can come back to the vendor, come back to MAS 360 and say, we have this requirement, and they can work on engineering a solution and then come back to us with the answer and the requirements from that. Another thing is, of course, with operational savings that we implemented with MAS 360, is we're now working to shut down our laptops using MAS 360 every night. Where it used to be, we used to ask our users to do it every night. We can now, across the enterprise, and the engineers develop this for us based on our requirements, to notify our users at 6 p.m. if they're working, we'd like you to shut down your computer. And they have the ability through a menu choice to defer that up to 6 hours, and at midnight it shuts it down. If they've already left and logged off their computer for the day, but forgot to shut it down, at 6 p.m., the computer powers itself off based on a command it's getting from MAS 360. So there's some real hard, tangible, can count the kilowatt hours saved and show our administrator these are dollars that are saved because those machines aren't sitting there consuming energy when they're not needed. So that's been a real tangible thing we can put our hands around and say, we've been able to save X amount of dollars because of this per computer.
That's excellent. Hey, could you share with us any key takeaways or lessons learned through this process?
Sure. And again, I kind of often sound like a broken record in this regard, but again, it is what's there now. And the fact that it's a cloud-managed service. It is a new way of thinking that everyone is going to have to adopt simply because the government says that's now the way you're going to have to do it. And so we produce the requirements, and then the MAS 360 with their engineers either have already developed the reports for us or can quickly develop them. So again, we're not having to put our own manpower to the task, and once they're developed, they're not only available for us, but of course those same types of reports are available to other customers as well. And as I said earlier, the FSMA requirements and reporting that we have, other agencies would have as well. The other thing that really is to me that's a big thing is it's kind of what I call fire and forget. And Jeff can relate this because I often give it to him, sometimes even late at night. I say, Jeff, can MAS 360 do this? And I don't know what happens on the other side of that email, but it isn't till I get the answer back, and then I get the answer back and can take it, whether it's to the CIO, the Director of Infrastructure Operations, or whoever, and say, okay, here's the answer.
Hey, Tom, I think I can answer what's on the other side of that email.
Okay.
I'm just making a joke.
And that's what I mean is again, it used to be, and I always like to say this, is manpower and man hours expended costs money too. Most people don't think about that, but if we have to sit around the table and have 5 meetings and then bring in our own internal engineers and have 5 more meetings, that all costs money too. So where now I fire it and forget about it until the answer comes back. So those are all benefits that we've realized both in cloud services in general and MAS 360 in particular. And again, Joe, I believe at this point you had one final polling question for everyone.
Yeah. This is going to be the last one of the day, folks. And really what we're trying to understand is as far as how mobile device management is situated operationally in your organization, where does it live? Who are the people that are responsible for managing the tablets and smartphones? So this is kind of a topic that is a bit cloudy right now for everyone, and I think everybody's trying to assess where the right place for this type of function lives inside of an IT organization. So we thought we'd ask you where it lives or where you plan to put it, and we'll share the results in a moment. Tom, the last thing I wanted to ask, and then we'll handle some Q&A here, is are there any future plans that you could share with us in terms of where you'll be going? I know you hit on it a little bit, but anything more specific?
Well, and one of the biggest things, and of course this is all in discussion and not yet in policy, but again with that A3 initiative, one of the key tricks to it is any device. And it leads to the idea of, in the past, we gave you a device and that's what you worked on. A new thought with, and Google email brought it home to us very quickly and cleanly, is it necessary that I give you a device for you to be able to work? For example, with Google email, I can be on a BlackBerry that's provided to me by the government, or I can also be on my own personal phone with a web browser and doing my email. And so it's really a matter of, again, embracing and adopting that new philosophy of, if those things are out in the cloud, you know, that mobility requirement, and again, I touched on them with iOS devices, for example, you know, tablets, whether they be iOS or Android, you know, that stuff we're going to have to look at, analyze, ensure, and it's going to come down to, and we've talked about this, device by device. Do we have the ability to sufficiently protect it and secure it? Then can we procure it? And if so, then how does that fit into the MAS 360 envelope of them being able to provide us that information that they provide on things that they do today, such as laptops? So again, it's almost like we don't know where it is, because we know a year from now it'll be different again.
Got it. Yeah, frankly, you've kind of hit on, I think, what, really the key benefits of a cloud-based solution are, which is you can evolve it rapidly and it's flexible. And that's certainly what, why we built the platform that way to begin with, and we're certainly happy that, customers and users of the system are able to take advantage of that and leverage that. So that's, obviously one great benefit. So cloud-based solutions do provide much quicker time to value, because you're just getting the use of the system versus the effort to get it up and running to begin with and then continue to maintain it and enhance it over time. And obviously, you get a lot more flexibility with a cloud-based solution. And, frankly, the entire community benefits from that evolution of the platform. And I think that was another key point that you really hit on today, Tom, was that, there were a lot of things that were enhanced in MAS 360 to support specific requirements of yours. I can think of a couple off the top of my head: the power consumption reporting, the CyberScope data feeds, that if those were done on a, internal system that the GSA was using, would not really be able to be leveraged by anyone else. All of those customizations would have to be re-implemented for some other department or agency or organization in their own systems. But with a cloud-based platform, the entire community, once that feature's been built and rolled out, gets access to it and gets the benefit of it, and that just helps everybody save more money as the functionality in the platform grows. So I thought that was also a great point, and you had really a number of good specific data points around how MAS 360 had been enhanced to support your specific needs. I'm sure folks who were attending could. So folks, if you've got some questions or some coming in, we're going to try to field them here, and I'll try to moderate a little bit because there's a few coming in. So first question is, based on the last poll, where does GSA place MDM support? Messaging, desktop, infrastructure, or is it a mixed tool set? So I guess fundamentally the question, probably to you, Tom, is how's GSA doing this? And where does your, the folks who do this for you at GSA, what department are they in? message?
Well, and again, it's quite honestly, and I think as it will be for the next few years, it's going to be in flux. A week ago, our 18,000 users were using Lotus Notes on a totally, internal infrastructure of servers and the like. Today, they're in Google, living out in the cloud. We are primarily today have BlackBerries, so that means we still have BES servers, and those are managed by those BES servers. We believe over time that inventory will shrink as we secure other smartphones and move them to the cloud as well. So again, I think it's a case of, where is it, what is it? It's shifting. We know how it's going to shift. We may not know necessarily how fast it's going to shift, but we know it's going to shift.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the thing we see, whether it's, in the, government space or in the commercial space is, everybody's trying to figure out what comes next. So there's kind of this kind of feeling that there's a post-BlackBerry world here that's being led by iOS and Android, and people are trying to figure out how they get from that nice, comfortable world they had of BES and BlackBerry to kind of this, a little bit more dynamic and certainly more innovative ecosystem that's popped up here, and how do they get from where they are to where they think they're going to need to be in a year or two, right? So I'll handle a couple of others here because I know our hour is almost up. And the question is simply this, and I'm going to read, this one's a little bit long, so I'm just going to read it verbatim. So recent PCI DSS guidance on virtualization in cloud seems to say that PCI compliance can't be achieved in public or shared environment. How did you satisfy your requirement while having third parties mixed in?
And Jeff, I'll kind of throw that one to you and to the security, please, again, to the FISMA compliance. I'll let you kind of address what's being done presently.
Sure. So I think, first of all, we don't have any PII that we host on the platform. It's machine names and usernames that can be, obviously modified per the company's requirements. So that there's no PII that resides in the Master360 platform. But above and beyond that, we built it to the NIST 853 Web3 standards, going through a FISMA, actually a FedRAMP moderate level certification accreditation with KPMG right now. They'll be finished shortly.
Super.
I don't know about any internal requirements that you had to meet.
Well, and again, I think the question was more to, how are we addressing, and again, this is again another challenge of the cloud, because again, it's a new mindset. It's the data is not inside a GSA building. That information is out there, as you related to. There is no PII that's being transmitted, either with or for the Mass360 platform out to the cloud.
Fantastic. So there's certainly a few more questions coming in, but our time's almost up here. So I just wanted to do kind of a quick wrap-up and then thank everyone for attending. So for those of you that don't know, Network World, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, ran an independent test and evaluation of mobile device management platforms during the second quarter, and they published their results a few weeks ago. In that particular head-to-head face-off, Mass360 got selected as the clear choice winner against, you can see some of the names that were in the list we were up against, but there are more if you go read the article. Obviously, if I had to pick one thing that was gratifying to hear from Network World, it was the word easy. So the word easy kept coming up over and over again in their descriptions of Mass360 and why it was better than or favored over the other mobile device management platforms that they tested. So we were very happy about that, and I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to go read the article and read the results of the testing, because I think it really helps sum up why Mass360 is a great option. A couple of other pieces of housekeeping. Our upcoming webinars over the next month on July 7th, we're going to be doing a webinar on mobile device management in a post-BlackBerry world. So you heard Tom mention, we use BES today, as almost every organization does, but it's not a BlackBerry-only world anymore, and we need to start preparing for it. And so Chris Corbett from our product management team is going to present there and discuss how companies can get from that place where it's a BES-only world to it's a bring-your-own-device world or it's an employee-owned world, but still have that same level of management and security and comfort that you have with BES and BlackBerry infrastructure today. On July 21st, Donna Lima will be presenting on how to enable iPhones and iPads in the enterprise. So we've rerun this webinar a couple of times because it's been so popular. We haven't done it in a while, so we thought we'd do it again. So you can learn what some of the best practices are for allowing iPhones and iPads to be used in enterprises in terms of getting email, getting access to corporate WLANs, and hitting corporate VPN servers. So we would encourage you to attend that if you can. We've obviously got all of our past webinars recorded, just like we're recording this one. If you visit the Master Center, you'll find the link off of our corporate website, manage360.com. We've got tons and tons and tons of research, studies, tips, how-to articles about mobile device management, about iPhones, Androids, iPads, Exchange ActiveSync, Notes Traveler, whatever type of mobile infrastructure, BlackBerry, BES you're running, you'll find lots of information out there about that. So I hope you would please leverage that content and take advantage of it. Appreciate everyone's time today in joining. You're going to get an email in a few minutes that will have a link where you can get the slides from today's webinar. And tomorrow, once we have the recorded version posted, you'll get a follow-up email with a link to the recording. For those of you who sent in questions that we weren't able to get to, we will get back to you via email and give you the answer to those. Tom, Jeff, thanks for participating today and sharing your experiences. And,
thank you. I appreciate it.
Folks who attended, thank you for your time and hope to see you again in 2 weeks. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude the conference call for today. We thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect. Have a good day.